What's going on, guys? Thank you for watching my channel and watching this video. Please like, comment, subscribe below for more content like this. Appreciate it. On June 22nd, 2020, I started my career as a business development consultant for Oracle Corporation in Boston, Massachusetts. Well renowned in the industry as the best sales training program in corporate America that was developed by former co-CEO Mark Hurd, I, along with hundreds of other bright-eyed and bushy-tailed recent college graduates, began my corporate career. My hopes of becoming a big shot so people would finally love and accept me, finally reaching an apex. The interesting thing was that when I took the job, I had no idea about anything about the company. I was a finance major in college. I was now supposed to sell things. I hardly knew how to adjust basic settings on my MacBook. I was now supposed to inform customers on the latest cutting-edge features of software products. My entire career trajectory was set up on going into financial services. I was now the lowest man on the totem pole of the second largest big tech company in the world, next to Microsoft. I only knew the basic facts of the company that I'd signed up to work for 8 months earlier, one day before Thanksgiving in 2019. Oracle didn't have any commercials. They didn't advertise anywhere. The biggest instruction I got was from a former high school football player who I looked up to his great credit, helped coach me through the interview process. It almost didn't work. I had a manager throw my resume into the garbage because I performed so poorly in one of them, for example. Only by a miracle did I get the opportunity to enter into this great unknown of this company. My first experience in corporate America was on my onboarding call with about 150 other people just like me, most of whom were new hires. I took the call from my bedroom closet in Somerville, Massachusetts, the only place I could formally work. I was beyond broke and barely making money to pay my bills. I had gotten into credit card debt to finance my move. I had just burned all my bridges with the biggest bank in the entire world, JP Chase, and the biggest bank in the Midwest, Huntington, which would have nearly paid me nearly twice as much, and I turned them down 3 times. Meaning, I had to make this work. I had to dominate. I had to win. The call, to put it mildly, was unlike any I had ever been a part of in my life. I imagine it would have been disorienting enough, given that this was my first ever interaction and my first ever big boy job. What made it more so was that the COVID pandemic and the summer of 2020 were still raging. I got pulled over on the interstate entering Massachusetts, for example, because I hadn't got a Massachusetts license plate yet. The Highway Patrol had seen enough incidents of unmarked plates setting fire to places like Back Bay, Massachusetts, where the rioters were still looting stores. You had to walk with a mask on outside. I almost got pulled over by a cop when I was taking a run through Harvard Square. It was an odd time in many ways, to put it mildly. But what made it more odd was the almost horror movie-esque entrance I got upon entry. Knowing absolutely nothing about us, the trainers made a point to tell us all coddled state school-educated new hires that we were quote-unquote special and the quote best. They outlined their DEI positions, which were followed by a roundtable of things like, quote, disability advocacy, quote, employee resource groups, or ERGs, or, quote, equity standards, all of which had been turned up to 1,000 in the aftermath of George Floyd. The company made me put up a virtual background to hide my, quote, divisive American flag. And I protested with a series of my own virtual backgrounds for the remainder of my entry-level tenure. I was almost so ridiculous, and I felt so absurd doing it, that it could have been straight out of a Jordan Peele film. It didn't feel right at all. But after the necessary hoop jumping, particularly post-George Floyd, as mentioned, I was in, and I learning all the ins and outs of the company I had just signed my life away to work for. The history of Oracle is a very interesting one. The company will be 50 years old in 2 years, a major feat for a company in the most innovative sector in the world. They've survived a lot, the mass adoption of the internet, for example, the dot-com bubble, the 2008 financial crisis, COVID, now the AI boom. I won't get into all the details here. But the highlights of its history matter immensely, particularly due to where the company currently stands. The first major event in the history of Oracle after it was founded by Larry Ellison and 2 others in 1977 was getting their first initial contract. And the organization who gave them their initial contract? The Central Intelligence Agency. Maybe you've heard of them before. The CIA, America's foremost intel service, was the organization who funded the initial growth of Oracle, which is now taking over the world as we speak. Oracle's deep ties to the intelligence community have always run very deep. The clandestine nature of their business, what they actually do, is very much tied to who they work with. And even back then, Oracle was a different technology company than most others. They did not make hardware products at all initially. Their niche was business-to-business software, mostly coming in the form of a database. Data and using data to improve your business was a completely foreign concept to most companies at the time. Filing cabinets and manila folders for most did the trick. Why would you need to pay some dork to do more work in organizing it? Moreover, unlike a computer, which Apple and Microsoft made, why would I pay for something I couldn't even see? The genius of Oracle was getting corporate America an inherently rigid structure to follow the old adage, skate to where the puck is going, not to where it currently is. More people were falling in love with computers by the minute, particularly after Apple released the Apple II as the first luxury consumer computer product. Ellison's point, along with people such as Bill Gates, was that in order to maximize computers, you had to maximize what went on inside computers. And speaking of Apple, it's also worth mentioning who Larry Ellison's best friend and closest friend in business was up until the time of his death: Steve Jobs. Jobs and Ellison were unbelievably close. They advised each other on business decisions. They watched each other's backs as the Silicon Valley boom exploded. Ellison saw so many screenings of Toy Story when Jobs was running Pixar that he wanted to throw up. Perhaps the biggest leg up that Jobs gave Ellison was their not-so-subtle favoritism he showed in their partnership of hardware and software. Was this partially because Jobs liked Ellison? Yes. Was it partly because Oracle made the best database in the world, particularly in comparison to Microsoft's SQL Server? Yes. But more importantly, was it also that Jobs absolutely couldn't stand Bill Gates? Unequivocally, yes. Thus, Apple became Oracle's biggest and most prominent customer after the initial project to help to modernize and pioneer the cutting edge of United States intelligence services. With Jobs becoming the most high-profile businessman in the world, his word carried a ton of weight. The people that associated with Jobs mostly did very well. The people who opposed Jobs, opposite of people potentially like Bill Gates, mostly didn't. There was no greater benefactor of association with Steve Jobs than Larry Ellison and Oracle. As the two companies at the forefront of the technology revolution kept ascending, as did corporate America, particularly when Ronald Reagan became president and threw the doors of regulations off of major corporations, including the tech companies. Profits boomed. Reinvestments were paramount in terms of keeping up with the competition. And where did corporate America at the time begin to reinvest most heavily? Technology. Oracle, having the best B2B software in the world for corporations, was in the right place at the right time. As the data and technology revolution boomed, Oracle was able to make incredible footholds into every major sector of the economy: banking, consumer products, healthcare, logistics, technology. Microsoft may have had individual consumers, but Oracle had the institutions who financed consumerism, i.e., their employees, particularly as the corporate work became the dominant strain and everyone started to become richer. As corporate America grew, so did their need for technology. Oracle kept building on their foundation, expanding and upselling into new add-ons, products, and additional components like hardware and applications. They were so influential that they helped encourage corporations to finance data centers on site, which were a massive capital investment that took up massive resources. But they couldn't do anything about it. They were hooked on the necessary drug of futuristic technology. They couldn't say no now. The world had changed. They had to change with it. And due to this, Oracle's momentum remained largely unimpeded until the early 2010s. Since the 70s, the data market, interestingly enough, had been largely stagnant when it came to innovation. Your company gathered data, you bought software and hardware to store it in so you could access it. You expanded and bought more as you grew your business. Rinse and repeat. No one questioned it for the longest time. Could anything be done better? Could this be more efficient? What if we tried a different way? The one company that asked this question was, ironically, the one who fell behind the eight ball in the first place: Microsoft. Microsoft, after a horrendous CEO tenure by Steve Ballmer, in which he tried to make a competing phone product with Apple, was now helmed by a man almost no one knew but Bill Gates, the man who had helped hand-pick him, Satya Nadella, who still runs the company to this day. Nadella, to put it mildly, wanted to go in a completely opposite direction than Ballmer and the entire industry. Cloud computing. Quote, cloud has been a topic of discussion by a lot of people, yet no one can understand what it actually means. Cloud is so revolutionary and different from what was done before because before, companies had to pay outrageous sums of money to manage, pay for, and store their data. Now with the cloud, you can pay someone else to do it. This is why you don't see laptops come with massive hard drives and desktops anymore, for example. This makes a major difference for an individual consumer, but for a Fortune 500 company, try game-changing difference. Cloud software, tech companies taking on the burden of managing, storing, and utilizing data on behalf of non-tech companies, save corporate America billions in terms of labor, logistics, overhead, and everything in between. The concept was revolutionary. The only thing missing was a company to build out a cloud that could successfully handle that amount of data. Enter Microsoft. Under Nadella's leadership, Microsoft pivoted the entire business and their entire business to best serve this overwhelming obligation of corporations to manage data. And it was a massive gamble, and one that paid handsomely. Nadella's foresight and aggressive investment strategy paid massive dividends, skyrocketing Microsoft's profits and taking them out of the dismal Ballmer years and into the ones defined by a new golden age. Microsoft, also deeply entrenched in corporate America, immediately captured the vast majority of the market for cloud computing. And Oracle was caught completely flat-footed. Their hubris, defined by the hubris of their founder Larry Ellison, took them from the top of the food chain to bottom dweller. On top of that, the two people running the company, co-CEOs Safra Catz and Mark Hurd, were not technologists. They were business people. Catz was a finance expert and Hurd a sales and marketing savant. Not only were they now behind, they had no means at all of catching up. But to try, Oracle attempted to throw out a shoddy cloud product in the immediacy of what industry analyst and former Oracle marketing chief, mind you, Bob Evans calls the cloud wars. It flopped tremendously. So much so that people thought Oracle was a has-been, another dinosaur tech company that had been left in the dust and was set to die, like Hewlett-Packard. But all of these people underestimated one thing: the gigantic ego and shallowness of Larry Ellison. In all of this, Larry Ellison saw opportunity. Ellison, like many CEOs, had completely hollowed out his personal life. He was not in a happy marriage. He couldn't turn his brain off. He didn't care for his children and grandchildren enough to ride calmly off into the sunset like most do. The only thing that was on his mind was what he had dedicated his life to, making Oracle the most powerful company the world has ever seen. To prove this, Ellison began to throw his weight around once again. He knew that Oracle at its core wasn't a software company. It was a data company. Given that all software needed data, there was a chance to pivot. To do so, he gutted Oracle's cloud team and poached Amazon and Microsoft's, throwing them a blank check budget to better build a better product. And so they did. Oracle's core promise and competitive advantage throughout its lifespan was that it best handled quote-unquote mission-critical workloads, i.e. part of your tech stack that couldn't go down. For example, if you were ordering a coffee on your way to work and your Starbucks app didn't load, that would be a catastrophe. Oracle's proposition was that the other vendors had too weak of a technological foundation from a data level to handle those workloads at scale. And Oracle, as always, would be the one to fill the gap. In addition, Oracle would offer their former core technology stack, complete with platforms and applications, in the cloud, being the first vendor in the space to do so. And it was a tough sled from the jump. After Oracle's botched first attempt, trust was scarce. Progress was still made, but ever slowly. At this rate, Oracle would still be left in the dust. However, after years of toil, Oracle finally struck gold. Oracle's promise of securing mission-critical data was possible in the cloud, but the potential for it was not fully realized until a small organization, by the way, the one that I was a part of, I saw this firsthand, did a then small deal with a little-known company in San Francisco with a far different business model: AI. OpenAI's ChatGPT had just come out. NVIDIA was still not a well-known company, much less one of the top 10 greatest companies by financial and market cap in the world. But they both had the same problem. They couldn't find a middleman that could bridge the hardware of NVIDIA with the software of a core AI business model like ChatGPT. They had tried it on other clouds, and they couldn't take it. Given that this was where all the major technology investment was going in Silicon Valley after ChatGPT, this bottleneck had the potential to cripple the AI business in America before it even got off the ground. Enter Oracle. With that initial deal, Oracle cemented itself as the only major cloud computing provider that could handle core AI businesses in an era where trillions of angel investment and venture capital were flowing. Little by little, Oracle began to chip away at the AI startup market, winning deal after deal that began to send tremors through the cloud marketplace. But the earthquake came when Ellison convinced his mentee, Elon Musk, to throw his AI company's data and his AI, Grok, and XAI above Oracle software. And so he did. Ellison could convince Musk of anything. He did so when he encouraged him to buy Twitter and turn it into X, if you didn't know that. The XAI deal, as well as the partnership with NVIDIA, made Oracle the go-to vendor for anyone who wanted to make it big in AI. In fact, Oracle and NVIDIA were helping to fund joint investment projects with each other, as well as venture capital firms such as Andreessen Horowitz. They knew that in order to dominate the future of business, they needed to forge an unbreakable partnership. Fast forward 3 years, and Oracle is, in my view, the most powerful company in the entire world, even more so than OpenAI. Why? Because OpenAI needs Oracle. Oracle doesn't need OpenAI. Just ask the $300 billion, yes, you heard that right with a B, deal that Oracle signed with them last month that sent their shares through the roof. Or ask Microsoft or Google or Amazon or any of the, quote, major cloud providers, all of whom are now buying from Oracle. Oracle has single-handedly monopolized the AI market, whether the AI market wants to admit it or not. No one gets to where they want to go without talking with Oracle first. So why does this matter? Well, for starters, it's the most underreported business story of the past half decade, at least. That would be enough. But it also matters because Larry Ellison is seeing this as an opportunity for something greater, his time in the sun. Ask yourself, up until very recently, what did you know about Larry Ellison, about Oracle? Did you know any of the facts that I mentioned? I would argue in most cases the answer is no. Larry Ellison is the most low-profile power player in the most dynamic business market the world has ever seen. He's been that way for 50 years. He's waited his turn. He's watched his best friend become potentially the most famous entrepreneur ever. He envied him for what he had. He tried to lie to himself by dating foreign supermodels and making money. It clearly hasn't worked. The only thing that is left, the only thing that is available for someone like Larry Ellison to maintain hold of, is something that he now has more than ever. Power. And not just power, but the greatest amount of power in the history of big tech. This is not hyperbole. Larry Ellison helped to pioneer the COVID contract tracing system. I watched him deliver a speech in Las Vegas personally where he said he wanted to create a universal healthcare database, all pioneered, of course, by his technology. He purchased the largest health tech company in the world, Cerner, a couple of years ago. The largest amount of healthcare data is now possessed in Larry Ellison's servers, now being run and tested on his AI models that he's selling to Silicon Valley and other corporations who are wanting to leverage AI for attaining power and profit. And that's not all. Last year, he told Tony Blair's demonic foundation, much similar to George Soros, that he and his partners are building AI that is going to be used to surveil American citizens and citizens of the world. He said it would make them more, quote-unquote, compliant and obedient, kind of like Klaus Schwab, only running a tech company. China does the same thing right now in their social credit system. Seeing as Larry Ellison just acquired TikTok, if you didn't know that, China's biggest company and a spy organization in and of itself, maybe he stole the idea from them. Or perhaps he lobbied the Trump administration for easier treatment. He fundraised heavily for them, along with the rest of the so-called tech right, during his last campaign. He's funding the acquisition through his son, David Ellison, of CBS News, Paramount, and now potentially CNN. He's directly selling tech software for drone technology to the Israeli military as they commit a genocide in Gaza. After his recent OpenAI deal, his net worth skyrocketed by $100 billion in a single day, briefly passing his pupil, Elon Musk, as the richest man in the world. Larry Ellison is now the most powerful man in the world. It's not Donald Trump. It's not Vladimir Putin. It's not even George Soros. The man who has the gold makes the rules. The man who has all the gold right now is Larry Ellison. Under his watch, America is quickly morphing into a technocracy, where unelected big tech mongers rule the roost, boss our elected officials around, and tell the rest of us to shut up and obey. We as Americans cannot and should not stand for this. We have rights in this country. We have the right to choose how we are ruled, not that of an 80-year-old sad billionaire who wants to impose his delayed midlife crisis on us. No one knows this is happening, probably because Larry Ellison has told a large portion of those who should tell us what is happening to shut up. But we can't, and we aren't. To defeat tyranny, you first have to understand when one is rising. But when you understand one is rising, we ourselves must rise to the occasion to fix it.